9 months. We were baptized the night before we left, and we moved the next day. That period of time was to be with Ella and Beulah and to find the Lord. Now, things did not go smoothly. Lives don't. And we made some bad choices. Bad choices, and they were, some of them were hard on our marriage. And I remember, exactly the night that I got down inside my bed and said, Lord, I can't do this anymore without more of you. I don't know what it looks like, but I've got to have more of you. And it was like he poured oil over me. And this peace came over me, and that was my filling of the Holy Spirit. And we went to Carroll, Iowa for 4 years. There was only one church in town that preached the gospel. We had some real problems with the minister and the way he conducted himself. So once we went 40 miles away to another church, and Jean just, and we ended up driving all, for 40 or 30 some years before he passed away to Omaha, but he didn't want to drive that far every Sunday. So for the most part, we didn't go to church for a while. Then we came to Fremont, and as he was looking for another position to leave Carroll, he began to have some health issues. And it actually was just a ureter that kept collapsing, but we didn't know that, and they didn't have technology to show us what that was. So over a period of time, they wrecked his kidneys, and he finally had to go on disability after a year and a half in Fremont. I was working at the hospital and developed cancer. So I had cancer at the same time that he was in the hospital for a month, and after that I had 2 years of chemotherapy. It damaged my immune system. It probably saved my life, but it damaged my immune system because it was stage 3 cancer. And I have lupus. I have 2 kinds of lupus, but I am without any symptoms. Praise God. I can do all kinds of things that you shouldn't be able to do, work in the sun, whatever. I was introduced to a nutritional product, and I think a lot of things come out of nutrition. But anyway, I will say that, things are not always the way we plan them, but that 9.5 years that my husband was off work and he was ill, 9.5 years, I pray, how long, Lord, how long? And he would give me peace, but then I would say, Lord, however long this takes, finish it. Finish the work that you're doing, because I don't want to go back here. And sometimes we make mistakes and we just keep going back. And I said, I don't want to go back here. I kept saying, I don't want to go back to Egypt. Then he gave Jean those years to develop Trinity's Christian School and OCA, and then in December of 2010, the Lord said, his work is finished. And I said, well, he's got a contract. He never went back after Christmas. And he passed away April 1st of 2011. Well, one day I was praising God that, he just gave me such joy for Jean to be released from that. I don't know if I ever really grieved. I was just joyous for him. And one day I said, Lord, he's free. Oh, I just thank you so much that he's free. And he said, and so are you. Well, what does that look like? And that's kind of scary. So we were at a retreat, and I said to Nancy Murdoch, "What do you think that looks like?" And she thought for a little bit, and she said, "You're to do just what you're doing until he shows you something different." We went to the next, you could choose where we wanted to go. We went to the next one, and she came in and sat down. She said, "Oh, you chose this one too." And I don't remember anything that the lady said, except she said, "I'm always asked, what should I do? What's my, what does God want me to do?" And she said, "I always tell them, do what you're doing until he shows you something different." So that's what I did. And he has opened doors for me. This evening, I would be chairing a Christian ladies group in Fremont. And, you know, various opportunities to witness to people and neighbors. And I'm so grateful for the years that he, you know, he restores what the locust takes. But I wouldn't trade anything for those years and the things he taught us during those years. And currently, you want to open it up for questions there? You want me to say kind of what I'm studying and what he's showing me now?
Let's open it up for questions. Are there any questions on that first little section there? Usually the first question takes a minute, never mind. It seems like everybody, like every time I go to say the first question takes a minute, and right as it's coming out of my mouth, Joel starts asking.
So you mentioned your husband, Gene. So you said that he started the school at Trinity, and what else did he do there?
An OCA.
An OCA? Okay.
Well, after he left Trinity, they thought he was too old, you know. So after he left Trinity, for a year, I got to just say he grieved. The man grieved, and I said, you know, he tried to substitute, he hated it, and so OCA called, and I said, "Oh, do it." They were kind of in a
To be the principal?
to lead it.
OCA's Omaha Christian Academy.
Yeah, because they kind of needed some revamping, and they had talked to him about it before, and he had said, "If I come, there have to be some changes." And he said, "You call me back if you want to do it." And they didn't, so the next year. They called him back and said, "We're ready to make some changes." And so that's where he was. He spent 3.5 years there. That's where he was when I got the word that he was. And our family would get together in this farmhouse down at Bedford. And as my sister was cleaning up the spring before, over Memorial Weekend, she said, "Oh, this has been so wonderful, Lord, for all of us to be together, and I look forward to all of us being together next year." And she said, the Lord said to her, "And Jean will be here." But she didn't tell me that until she said, "I just thought I would pray that night." And in January of that year that he passed away, he said, "I will not recover from this. I will go home this time." And I said, "Oh, well, you don't know that." He said, "Yeah, I do." So, you know, and then in the end, that's all he wanted to do. He just wanted to go home. You know, he was just so anxious to go home. I think that makes it easy to release.
Right.
Other questions? Do you know anybody else that rode a horse to school? Now, can you imagine, in this day and age, can you imagine parents putting a 5- and 7-year-old on a horse and sending him off 2 miles and
How did you get off your horse? Was it a big horse?
It was kind of a middle-sized horse.
Oh, okay.
Billy it was kind of a middle-sized horse. He was blind in one eye. And that's even worse. But yeah, and he on the way to school one time.
Sending your kids to school on a blind horse. There you go.
But poor Billy, you know, we'd tied him to the coal shed, and That school was a trip anyway. It was so cold. It had a little
It's like one of
little
those
pot belly
prairie.
stove, and you could put benches around it, and you baked one side and froze the other side, and then you turn around and bake the other side. And our lunches were in a cloakroom, and they froze.
Oh, my
You know,
goodness.
it was just,
Did you like run, the horse ran, or just trotted to school?
trotted to school and ran home.
Oh,
Yeah, I bumped all the way up the first hill.
oh, my.
That is fun.
Yeah.
Huh, that's interesting.
I was also wondering, like, you said that like you hear from the Lord, like, what is that like how? Like what does it look like when you hear from Him?
He just puts thoughts in my head I didn't have. I've never heard him audibly, but, you know, and I'm not, I know that's for you. And even, I would say 2 or 3 times a week when I'm just having my quiet time with him and read the Word, and I'll be just talking to him and you know, just put a thought in my head. Sometimes it's just reassurance, and you know.
So, second, you want me to read that second question? Would that help? Is that helpful, or do you know?
Well, it's where I am now.
Yeah, well,
What you're learning now.
yeah, what you're learning now,
Yeah.
how you're learning it.
Well, you know, this past year, and I was one of those people that would, I would have little devotionals that I would read, and then I'd read the scriptures that went with them, and I had read through the Bible and done different things, and the Lord just really encouraged me to take a book and just analyze it, just go through and verse by verse, and there was always, every day there's been just something jump out at me. Then I did Revelation, and I went to the bookstore. I'd worn out my Bible, and for Mother's Day they gave me a gift certificate to Parables, and I said, I'm going to buy a new study Bible because I've worn mine out. And my grandson that's playing football for Wheaton said, that's a good thing, Graham. That's a very good thing that you've worn your Bible out. That is a good thing. And I went down to get it, and she said, oh, okay, that costs enough that you can pick out something over here. Well, I had read about Babylon Code, and it was there, and I thought, well, let's take this, and started reading it, and it was correlating with Revelation that I was reading. And then, you know, there's always a controversy about rapture and that kind of thing. So I decided, okay, I'm going to read the Thessalonians. And then I went through and read Timothy and Titus, and the 2 Timothys and Titus. And right now, I was going to look more deeply at Acts and what was going on around when Pentecost came, and then it was like the Lord said, well, there's a lot of about the Holy Spirit in Luke, and you really need to read the 2 together. So right now I'm reading Luke, and I always did that, read the Gospels ahead of Christmas. So right now I'm reading Luke, and now I'm into Acts. But I've just appreciated being able, you know, just going through step by step, you know, each little passage, looking at it, and letting the Lord speak to me.
So a combination of reading, some study, prayer.
Yeah, I always have a prayer time. Sometimes before I look at the scriptures, sometimes after. But I just think there need to be that time of just sitting with the Lord and praying. But I also, I pray during the day as things come into my mind, and I pray for people as the Lord puts them in my mind, and then I just, I'm alone, so I just talk to him, and because he's a real person, he's with me. And he showed me right after I was a widow that he was my husband. He's my protector and my provider. And one night my sister had just gotten a gun. Now I was the one who shot. My mother taught us, we lived, kind of remote area, so she taught both of us to shoot. And so I was always the one that had to go shoot the whatever that needed to be shot. And I would say, you do it this time. Oh, no, you do it. But anyway, she went through the whole thing and got a little gun that she carries. And so I was talking to a friend that was coming up to a gun show, and he was going to pick up some product from me, and I said, oh, you're going to buy me a gun? He said, well, I've got a perfect gun for you. Do you want it? And I said, oh, I'd have to pray about that. So that night I was locking all the doors and checking them, and I said, oh, Lord, do you think I ought to buy a gun? He said, do you want to protect yourself, or do you want my protection? I won't be buying a gun. And I have had no fear about anything since that time. That's reassurance enough for me. Any questions?
What color of a gun did he want to sell you? Just a
The little 22.
Where would you go out? Oh, go ahead.
So I just missed what you said. Do you want protection, or what was it you said?
Do you want to protect yourself, or do you want my protection?
Oh.
Yeah, well, that's not much of a choice there. I'll take yours.
So when you learned to shoot, what did you shoot?
Well,
You said you go out
I had to protect the
whatever needs
chickens.
shooting.
We lived next to Comstock Timber, and there, I don't know why, but they put the brooder house for the chickens up, wasn't too far from the forest. And it was my job to protect the chickens. So sometimes you had to, sometimes, or foxes, or skunks, or whatever, you had to shoot them.
Oh, skunks eat chickens?
Well, yeah, they'll kill chickens,
Wow.
especially small ones,
Wow, didn't know that.
So,
Maybe we should have her come over and shoot the squirrels from eating the fruit trees.
You got all
Well,
5 pairs.
I kind of got into trouble with the, I didn't, but I should have. I had starlings that would come, and I had a fir tree in the yard, and they would come, you know how they are,
Yes.
dirty,
Yes.
and they just come in a flock in that fir tree right by my front door. And so I said to a girl I worked with, I think she had one, I said, you have a shotgun? And she said, well, yeah. I said, could I borrow it? She said, well, yeah, it's a real 20 gauge. I said, perfect. And so they came in, and I stood on the porch and shot into that tree. And of course, it went a little bit, just a big noise to them. So I got in under the tree and shot up into the tree. Those birds left and they never came back. I always say they talk to one another, They have never come to my house. They fly over, but they've never come to my house.
They marked that tree. That's awesome.
Any other questions?
You shot up into the tree. Did it kill anything?
Any more questions?
Any more or less smiling questions?
You just gave Jacob ideas.
Yeah.
Okay. So next, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you were in your late teens and early 20s?
Well, that's a lot of things. But I think what I have learned since that time, and I would emphasize this very much to you kids, to learn it early. Don't make any decisions or moves without lots of prayer, prayerfully considering, God, what do you want me to do? Not what somebody is saying and trying to entice me to do, but Jean and I made some choices that actually changed the course of our life. And if we had, some wise counsel, would have been good. We did not seek that. We left there and went to Iowa State. We moved into Des Moines and we left the Omaha area. Gene said when he closed that school, it was Hitchcock that he had opened. When he closed the door, he knew he made a mistake. And it was. But we had not approached that in the right way. He had allowed himself to be influenced by his twin brother. And I think both of us had reservations about it. I remember an older Christian. I said, we're just looking forward to what the Lord has for us there. And she just paused for a minute and she said, and lessons that he will teach you. I never forgot that. And that, I would say, asking for scriptures, asking for confirmations. If this is your will, Lord, and stay in His will. Don't step out of it, because we definitely step out and we're on our own. Then you're on your own, and that's not a good place to be. That's not a comfortable place to be. When you're out there swimming by yourself with no lifeboat. So that's what I would say.
And so, in that case, just a question, you would probably say it wasn't an open battle. You weren't disobeying in the sense of you knew you weren't supposed to go, but you went anyway. It was more of you were influenced by this brother, and
now the tie between twins, identical twins, is very, very strong. It is different, isn't it? And so, I never felt like I could intervene and say, well, he's just leading you down the wrong way, because I knew that tie was just incredible. And he's the one who gave him a kidney and allowed him to go back to work after 9.5 years.
oh, wow.
Because identical twins have the same DNA. And he never had to take any anti-rejection medication or anything. Yeah.
And so, from your standpoint, this is really interesting. So you maybe kind of had that check in your spirit, like it wasn't right, but yet you maybe weren't sure because of, is that kind of how that played out?
Yeah, and also things had happened, and part of what Gene was feeling was, I think his pride was hurt. He'd opened this new open space school, and they didn't know kind of what to expect. He kind of ran it like a huge country school. was very orderly, very quiet. Children moved from place to place, and my mother came and saw it. She was just, they've got to do this. But they had seen schools where it was kind of chaotic, and kids were sort of running around different places, and that's what they wanted to see. And so they put him on probation. And he was just stunned because this was working and hurt. And a lot of his decision was made on that. And an interesting thing, and this will tell you a lot about my husband. After we were in Des Moines, one day he said, I have to go back and apologize to Don and Ron. And I said, why would you apologize to them? Because they opened the one and it was chaos, and they put the walls up by December. And they realized he had the right idea. But he said, I need to go see him. So he made an appointment, drove clear back over to their office and met with him. And he said, when he went in, they were just, and they started, you know, we've learned a lot, we've seen a lot. And he said, I didn't come to cash anything out. I just came to apologize because I was hurt, I was angry, and I need to ask your forgiveness. And they just looked at me and said, would you forgive me? Would you forgive me for that bitterness that I felt? Well, yeah, I guess so, yeah. And he said, that's all I came for. And he wrote back. And you know, as long as that man lived, I never heard him say a negative thing about either one of his women. In fact, if anybody said anything about either of them, because they weren't perfect men, but if anybody said anything about either one of them, he did. And that told me a lot about his character. Any other questions?
Last one?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so here you get to preach. What one piece of encouragement or wisdom would you like to pass on to the youth of this generation?
Stay in the scriptures. You know, you live in a very, very difficult time. Lots of negative influence. It's very dark. And learn to stand. And what I tell my grandchildren is, do not leave your house or your room or wherever you are without putting on the whole armor of God every day. And that helmet protects your mind. I watch video games. I watch the amount of time that you spend in, because what goes into our minds is very, very important. I take 2 boys to school, and you know, I give them a little Bible lesson every morning, and I always say, you know, what goes into your mind is very, very important. The whole armor of God in Ephesians 6 is, you know, go through that and apply that every day, because you're going to need it. You're going to need it. You may not realize, and it may not be today, but you are going to need it. And that's very important. Just establish a relationship where you're just talking to him, and you know he's there with you, and but stay in the Word. You know, it is probably the best book you'll ever read anyway. But stay in the Word every day, and get in that habit. It is a habit. And don't get out of that habit, because it's, you know, Satan would love for you to get out of it. So weigh everything carefully, you know, because that's, be sure that you're in His will all the time.
Very good.
Any more questions on that little part?
Is everybody familiar with that armor of God? It's in Ephesians 6, so
Mhm.
if you want to look it up and read it.
Every step of it. And some Bibles will have actually itemize it then and exactly what that means to you. And
I know a couple of you, that was the first thing we studied in Bible study, remember that?
was the
Two of you, the armor.
Was it really?
the armor.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, the first thing was Proverbs, we
Okay,
went
I was
through a
gonna
bunch
say,
of Proverbs. Then the first passage of scripture we, instead of topical.
And it's listed other places, but that, I like Ephesians
Oh,
6.
that's awesome.